Affairs Committee. For the record, my name is Toby Urich. That's Tobyurek, and I am honored to represent Nevada's Assembly District 19. Today I'm here with our state's CIO, Tim Galuzzi, and the Administrator of the Office of Cyber Defense and Coordination, Mr. Adam Miller. Now, Chair, if I can just make sure, and committee members, there was a conceptual amendment. Seems like most of our bills this session have been presented with conceptual amendments. This one is really just to correct a drafting error that came out of LCB that specifically takes item L under subsection 2 and crosses it out. To be clear, this bill aims to direct state executive branch state agencies to be a part of this SOC. Everybody else is opt-in, and somehow it came out and they said that the state agencies can opt in. No, we want state agencies to be mandated to participate in this SOC. So that conceptual amendment should be before committee members. It was uploaded to Nellis. Additionally, I just want to put on the record, I have been contacted by the Assistant Nevada Supreme Court Administrator indicating some possible concerns that the way this is worded, that it might be a stretch forcing our judicial branch to participate and mandate them. For the record, I want to make clear, and I will continue to work with the Administrator, Mr. McCormick, to clarify that I'm a ardent supporter of Article 3, Section 1, separation of powers, and we will clarify any language that might be needed to address that concern as well. So before we begin to dive into threat matrices and network logs, let me ask the committee members something a little more familiar. Has your email ever been hacked? Has your credit card number ever been stolen? Maybe one day your phone lit up with a charge from a gas station in Ohio saying that you charged fuel there when you were literally sitting in this building. Or here is my recent favorite. Maybe you got one of those suspicious text messages telling you that you owe money for using a toll road. Well, I happen to sit on our Growth and Infrastructure Committee, and I can guarantee you we do not have any toll roads in Nevada. So likely that would be a scam, and unfortunately it is a very effective one. Cybercrime is not some abstract threat anymore. It is very personal. It's pervasive, and it is hitting closer to home than ever. And just like we wouldn't leave the front doors to our homes wide open, we shouldn't leave our state's digital front door unlocked either. So let's talk Nevada for a moment. Make no mistake, we are a high-value target. Between our tourism, gaming, financial institutions, government databases, and critical infrastructure, we are not just a neon oasis in the desert. We are a blinking bullseye for bad actors across the globe. And let us not forget, every January, Las Vegas becomes the global epicenter for innovation during our Consumer Electronics Show, one of the largest and most influential tech trade shows in the world. Alongside CES, Nevada hosts a steady stream of conventions and conferences centered around cutting-edge technologies, smart infrastructure, AI, and data. These events put us under an international spotlight, and while they certainly help to drive economic growth, they also attract attention from cybercriminals looking to exploit new vulnerabilities or make a high-profile statement. You might even remember the MGM ransomware attack last year. One compromised password shut down gaming floors, canceled reservations, and reportedly cost more than $100 million. That was not just a disruption, it was a heist, a PR nightmare, and a statewide wake-up call. And the truth is, that was just one of many. Right now, Nevada's cybersecurity posture is patchworked. Different agencies, different systems, different levels of defense. And when cybercriminals exploit these gaps, it's not just agencies that suffer. It's school kids whose data is leaked. It's seniors who lose their retirement savings. It's veterans, patients, voters, and taxpayers. It's your constituents. That's why I've brought this bill forward. After nearly a year of collaboration with various stakeholders and our state CIO officer, that's why we've brought this bill. In short, here is what AB 432 does. It establishes a statewide security operations center, often referred to as an SOC, under the office of the CIO, providing 24/7 cyber threat monitoring and response. It authorizes federal grant funding to support the center's operation and growth. It requires annual reporting to ensure transparency, performance tracking, and accountability. It creates a cybersecurity talent pipeline program to train and recruit Nevada students into this growing field. It extends SOC services to school districts and local governments, helping smaller entities improve their cybersecurity with state-level resources. And finally, it empowers the SOC to enforce compliance, mitigate risks, and coordinate across agencies in the event of a cyber incident. It's a smart, scalable, and collaborative solution, and frankly, it's long overdue. Now, to explain how it all works, with your permission, Chair, I would like to hand the presentation over to Mr. Tim Galuzzi, our state CIO, who will walk you through the vision, mechanics, and strategy behind this bill. We are also joined by Adam Miller, a technical expert from the Office of Cyber Defense and Coordination, who's on deck to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Timothy Galuzzi, and I serve as Nevada's Chief Information Officer in the Office of the Chief Information Officer within the Office of the Governor. I am joined today by Administrator Adam Miller from the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination. Thank you for the opportunity to provide insight and analysis on Assembly Bill 432. I would also like to thank Assembly Member Urich for his efforts in elevating the conversation on cybersecurity. To fully understand what this legislation is endeavoring to accomplish, we must first contemplate the situation that our cybersecurity professionals in Nevada are facing every day. Modern government is interconnected government. From over 485,000 students across 761 schools and 23 school districts, all sending reports, emails, communications, all at some point reaching the Department of Education and into the executive and legislative branches. Nevada's IT environment is vast. We're talking over 3.3 million residents, 28 federally recognized tribes, 17 counties, hundreds of boards and commissions, and over 40 million visitors a year. These are all stakeholders who interact with state and local systems every day. Every voter record, every tax form, every school network, every email sent, every transaction is an opportunity for a threat actor to move from a Nevadan or a visitor to a local entity and beyond. This is what we are being asked to defend. We've made real progress through partnership, particularly between the Office of Information Security and the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination. But let me be clear, collaboration is not a substitute for structure. Nevada lacks a centralized backbone for cybersecurity. Cyber threats are becoming more frequent and more sophisticated. Many of our agencies are running on aging infrastructure and tight budgets. But what is our biggest risk? They're also our biggest asset, our people. One bad click, one missed update, that's all it takes. Both OIS and Office of Cyber Defense Coordination take a proactive approach to cybersecurity awareness to address the human element and to help turn those risks into defenders. As you could probably assume, Nevada's not alone. I'm going to now go through some case studies. In 2018, the Colorado Department of Transportation was brought to a standstill by ransomware, $1.7 million in recovery costs. And it all started with an unsecured temporary server. That's why centralized visibility and oversight aren't nice to haves, they're essential. Quincy, Illinois spent over 6 months recovering from a 2022 attack. City files were encrypted, entire departments were frozen. The absence of backups and coordinated response plans turned a breach into a full-blown shutdown. $1.2 million were lost to fake invoices in Fort Lauderdale due to a business email compromise. It wasn't a technical failure, it was a training and policy failure. Investment in awareness and governance can help mitigate events like this. In 2023, Atlanta's ransomware recovery topped $17 million. That number isn't just financial, it's reputational. Public confidence, essential services, internal operations, they were all disrupted. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid. In Texas, one attacker took down 22 municipalities. Statewide disruption. That's the danger of fragmented approach to cybersecurity. The inverse would be a unified response. Capability, one team, one mission, shared intelligence, and response capability. In Oakland, They declared a state of emergency after ransomware breached in 2023. They lost over 600 gigabytes worth of data. They're now facing lawsuits from citizens and even their own police union. Cybersecurity failures don't just hurt systems, they undermine institutions. In Bernalillo County, this one is especially sobering. Ransomware knocked out jail security systems. Doors couldn't lock, cameras were disabled, schools closed, mortgage applications were frozen. Real-world impacts of these threats is why this bill matters. The common thread across all of these events is cyber criminals will continue to try to exploit our vulnerabilities, and the consistent lesson is this: if you don't have a central structure in place before the attack, it's already too late. You cannot build the plane in flight. We've seen patterns of reputational harm, service disruption, massive recovery costs, but we've also seen what works: centralized, proactive cybersecurity backed by policy, resources, and accountability. The good news is we're not starting from zero. Our Office of Information Security is already doing the work. Threat hunting, training, monitoring, this bill allows us to scale that work statewide and serve more partners effectively. In FY24, we analyzed over 298 billion network logs, billion with a B. We reviewed over 241,000 incidents and validated 17,304 of them as legitimate threats. That's a scale of the threat landscape that we're seeing just in the executive branch. And we're keeping up. But we see that there's an opportunity to sustain and grow those efforts. We've received 12 critical emergency notifications last year. We resolved all 12. That's 100% resolution on the most serious incidents. That's a standard we want to set across all state and local entities. The number of incidents is increasing. It's not speculation, it's data. And that's not a wave we can just ride out. We cannot continue to practice security through obscurity. They are after us. We have to scale up, we have to stay ahead, and we have to keep moving. With emerging technologies such as agentic AI that creates agents that act autonomously, we will only expect to see this number grow exponentially. The State Office of Cyber Defense Coordination is key here. They're the bridge to local, tribal, and private sector partners. They're currently how we reach outside the executive branch. AB 432 does four big things. Creates a Security Operations Center underneath the Office of the Chief Information Officer, allows us to apply for and use federal grant funding, requires annual performance reporting, and brings schools into our cybersecurity coverage. That's a strategic package. The SOC won't just watch for threats, it'll mitigate them and hopefully prevent them from happening in the first place. It'll develop policy, enforce standards, and coordinate response. It'll serve as a center for excellence and an accountability mechanism all at once. We're shifting from scattered approaches to unified, scalable defense. We're optimizing for cost, talent, and threat intelligence. This is about sustainability and strategy. Nevada's higher ed institutions are building the next generation of cyber talent. Our public sector cybersecurity summit convenes leaders to collaborate. We've seen that this works. AB 432 aligns those investments and helps turn training into action. Here's the truth. Trying to run 30 different security teams is expensive and ineffective. Centralizing under a SOC gives us economies of scale and better ROI. Local governments are some of the most targeted and least resourced. AB 432 opens the door for them to access state tools, staff, and expertise. This is how we protect everyone, not just the big agencies. K-12 systems house sensitive data and are increasingly digital, and cyber criminals know that. AB 432 gives schools access to state-level monitoring and response, so our students and teachers are protected as well. This is about resilience, and with one SOC, we can share intel, coordinate response, raise the bar across the board. It's not just smarter, it's faster, it's cheaper, it's better. The costs of a breach are enormous. Millions in recovery, legal costs, and reputational damage. A centralized SOC helps us avoid these costs, keeps services online, and demonstrates to citizens that their data is in good hands. finally, this bill is the kind of long-term thinking we need in government. It's not about a quick fix. It's not about building it's about building durable modern infrastructure that protects our state's digital backbone. The timing couldn't be even more critical. With recent federal cuts to CISA, the Federal Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, the announcement of the withdrawal of federal support for MSISAC, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, and just last week's executive order signaling the federal policy shift towards cybersecurity preparedness and responsiveness at the state and local levels, it is time that we send a clear message to all of our municipal and governmental partners here in the Silver State that you're not alone. Nevadans take care of Nevadans. It's time that we ensure that if we have an agency that needs our support, regardless of what level of government that they sit, that if they pick up the phone, that they have someone to call. A lot of you might not know a lot about my story, but before I joined the state, I had the honor of serving our country in the Marine Corps. And I know, a lot of movies get a lot of things wrong, but when they talk about one thing in particular, that we don't leave anybody behind, that's true. And if we have the opportunity, even in the world of cybersecurity, that if we see an agency hurting, if we see an agency struggling or being attacked, we can't sit back and watch that happen. And if we have the resources to help them, we have an obligation to do so. This gives us the ability to do just that. One of the biggest frustrations that I've had since joining state service is that we have arbitrary rules, and I call them arbitrary, but there's rules in place for funding reasons, for policy reasons, that we have restrictions on what we can and can't do when the answer seems obvious. If someone's hurting, if someone needs support, we provide that support. This bill will allow us to do just that. And so right now, I guess, is the time that I can kind of just walk through very quickly a section-by-section review of the bill. Section 1 allows for the amending of NRS 242. Section 2 requires the SOC to establish policies and procedures combating threats, protecting data, response and reporting requirements, as well as training requirements. Section 3 discusses potential remedies for noncompliance with SOC policies and procedures and using agencies. Section 4 allows the CIO to apply for grants to support SOC activity. Section 5 mandates collaboration with the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination. Section 6 outlines mandatory reporting requirements to state stakeholders. Section 7 defines the requirements to partner with the Nevada System of Higher Education on a talent pipeline program. Section 8 adds SOC services to the definition of information services in NRS 242.055. Section 9 expands the definition of local governmental agencies to include the Board of Trustees of a school district. Section 10 defines a using agency as either an agency who is required to use OCIO services or one that may negotiate. Section 11 adds the word secure to emphasize security as OCIO's purpose and broadens the scope to all using agencies. Section 12 adds SOC as an entity within the Office of the CIO. Section 13 adds details from cybersecurity incidents specifically to the items that may be protected from public disclosure if that disclosure would further place an agency or the state at risk of further compromise. Section 14 again broadens the definition of using agencies. Section 15 defines what services would be provided to using agencies and allows any governmental agency to negotiate for OCIO services. Of note, Section 15 is where OCIO and the bill sponsor have worked on a friendly amendment that would remove line L from the list of subsection 2 to prevent an exception loop. Section 16 through 18 further simplify language, leveraging the word using agency. Section 19 adds the requirement to report security incidents to the SOC for using agency. Section 20 requires OIS to work with the SOC to investigate and resolve breaches of using agency systems. Section 21 authorizes the CIO to set a rate for SOC services. Section 22 makes clarifying updates. Section 23, NRS 218 Delta dot 380 does not apply. Section 24 repeals NRS 242.141 as it is made redundant through this bill. That concludes the overview of this bill. Thank you again for the opportunity to present. We stand ready for any questions that the committee may have.
Chair, thank you, and committee members. Toby Yerk for the record. I appreciate the attention. I was watching all of your faces, and this can be a confusing topic. And so while we appreciate the opportunity to present kind of an overview, we would love to entertain any specific questions the committee may have.
Thank you. And we do have some questions. I am requesting everyone on the committee that has questions, please limit it to 2, and we'll go around. And if we have additional timing, we'll go back for any additional questions. But this morning, we will start with Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. And thank you, Assemblymember Yerk, for the presentation. Really broad. A lot of agencies fall into this. So one of my biggest curiosities is how you link all of these different agencies by state, county, city, unincorporated, incorporated. But since we have 5, and this bill references 5 standing organizations that address information technology intelligence, what is the 6th one, and how is it going to function to actually corral this? I don't see how that works in this bill.
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Chair, thank you. For the record, Timothy Galuzzi, State Chief Information Officer. So right now, Office of the Chief Information Officer is a internal service organization that provides services to governmental agencies. What this bill will allow us to do is really broaden our user base. So with the Security Operations Center, we would be able to provide those services to non-executive branch agencies directly. And so what this bill envisions is that all non-executive branch agencies would be able to opt into those services. So if we're talking county governments, city governments, K through 12, school districts, any non-executive branch governmental organization who would see the value in investing in statewide Security Operations Center, it would be opt-in. And I think that that is a clear distinction in this bill, is we're not mandating that any non-executive branch organization would be required to use these services. For the executive branch agencies, they're already leveraging these services through the Office of Information Security, so we would just shift those over to the Security Operations Center. But for non-executive branch organizations, this would be opt-in. So we're already working with them through the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination, but this would be an opportunity for us to provide more direct services to them, which after this biennium, we would be developing a rate and then give them the opportunity to actually provide direct investment into that SOC. Hopefully that provides a little bit of clarification. If not, I can dive more into that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Goulding.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the concern. I think that, as you stated, most of us have seen, either in smaller or larger scales, this very real threat. And I think that 3 months ago, I would have responded to this bill differently than I am today. So given the current data breach at the federal level by DOJ that has crept through citizens' data that should have remained secure, how can Nevadans be assured that the plan outlined in AB 432 wouldn't leave our state more vulnerable by having everything tied up in one system? You mentioned that AB 432 opens the door to security services, But my concern is, seeing what's happened at the federal level, that it opens the door to everything.
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Timothy Galuzzi, for the record. The only data at this point that would be transmitted to the Security Operations Center would be security logs and data specifically for securing the infrastructure of the participating agencies. So we would not be taking over infrastructure. We are not taking data from municipal governments and moving it over to state entities. The municipal data infrastructure belongs to the municipal data infrastructure. And so that is not what this bill is envisioning whatsoever. This bill is really looking for opportunities to leverage economies of scale, to be able to provide resources out to our municipal partners, resources that unfortunately a lot of our municipal partners just really can't afford to provide at a level of maturity that we can provide statewide in a whole of state approach. This does not give the Security Operations Center, the envisioned Security Operations Center, access to servers, data, equipment that would be in the municipal protection. And so that is not what this bill is envisioning whatsoever. But I definitely appreciate the concern of data security and ensuring that what belongs to municipal governments or other subdivisions of government stays in those subdivisions.
So you can assure us that this is not a master key to all government data systems. That's a question. If it's not a master key, then what's the analogy? Is it the key creator? I want assurance, as I would imagine all Nevadans do, is that there is no master key.
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Timothy Galuzzi, for the record. The standard practice and the practice that we would promote through this is that data at rest is encrypted. The Security Operations Center would not have that encryption for those agencies that it is providing services for. That would belong to those agencies. Agencies would control that encryption. That is not within the purview of a Security Operations Center. What is within the purview of a Security Operations Center would be disaster recovery plans, threat mitigation, intelligence sharing, the actual logs that has nothing to do with the data that is involved. In our world, we practice least privilege. The last thing we would want to do is have folks that are involved with cybersecurity to have access to data, because that violates one of the core principles of cybersecurity, and that is a principle of least privilege. We don't believe in master keys. As the state's chief information officer, as the leader of IT and the one who advises in cybersecurity and IT matters in the highest levels of executive branch, I have zero administrative privileges. And that's intentional. And that is so, me being one of the largest targets for, spear phishing attacks or directed attacks towards me, that if they get me, then they can't do anything with my accounts. And so we definitely practice least privilege and data privacy, and the SOC would be no different there.
Adam Miller, for the record. I think a helpful analogy, too, is thinking of this like a post office. If I send you a letter, it doesn't go, unless I physically walk up and put it in your mailbox, it goes to the USPS. The USPS scans that mail. They'll swab it, they'll x-ray it for nefarious reasons, but they won't actually physically open the mail and read the letter inside. And I think that's the data that we're talking about here, is they'll look at the packet that you're receiving, they'll scan it for malicious intent, but they won't actually physically open that letter and read the writing in the letter.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this detailed presentation. find it quite informative. I have two questions, one general, one then very specific as it relates to Section 15, but not necessarily the amendment. The general question is the intent of this bill basically a reorganization of an existing system using existing staff and responsibilities? Or are we creating a new program that needs new staff with new responsibilities?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember DeLong. So this is, I like to move away from the word reorganization. It's definitely a realignment, and that might be synonymous, but this is an authorization. And that's the way I look at it. This authorizes the Office of the Chief Information Officer to stand up this program. And this program, in the very early stages, can begin as more of a virtual program where I don't necessarily need boots on the ground on day one. This allows me to extend services that already exist within the executive branch out to municipal entities at hopefully a lower cost in which they are going out individually to get those services on their own. And so in order to do that, the vehicle in which has been designed to do that is this Security Operations Center. Our intent is to leverage the federal grant funding that has already been made available and additional grant funding that we hope to go out and secure to eventually bring the boots on the ground piece to build this out as a program. And that's our intent to do this upcoming biennium. And then we would be back next biennium to further have conversations on what that is growing into. But to kind of answer your question, this is not a reorganization of resources that we already have within the executive branch. This is more of an authorization to be able to extend the tools and abilities that we have in the executive branch out to our municipal partners.
Thank you. My second question, as it relates to Section 15, you've got Subpart 1 and then Subpart 2, and I'm just trying to understand, how did you divide up the various state agencies and say, okay, this group of state agencies, you're required to do this. This other group of state agencies, you can opt in. What was your litmus test to say who falls in which group?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember DeLong. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. The list of agencies that are currently in subsection 2, those agencies have historically been in subsection 2 for quite some time. And so those are carryover from previous legislation.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this presentation. I guess my only concern is if schools opt into this, children often say stuff that they don't mean. There are real threats, and then there are some things that are just said on impulse. Could this tool be used to target and criminalize children?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Jackson. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. I don't believe that would be in the scope of this bill. I think what we are really looking at for this legislation, we're looking at network scans. We're looking at scans of infrastructure. We're not looking at content of communications. I don't see how this bill would divert from any standard course of action that is currently being conducted within K through 12.
Okay, the next question is from Assemblymember Karras.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Quite a detailed presentation. Appreciate that. I have one question. How many states have enacted an executive branch-driven centralized cybersecurity system? Are we the first, or are there others?
Adam Miller for the record. As far as a specific number, I can definitely come back to you with that. I think one gleaning example of this, though, would be North Dakota. 4 years ago, North Dakota had a very disparate cybersecurity kind of patchwork organization throughout their state. In the last 4 years, they've increased their cybersecurity operation 50 FTEs and approximately $30 million. And so they stood up their own SOC. And so I think from me personally, that's kind of the shining light that we would move toward as a North Dakota operation. But as far as the specific number of states that have a centralized SOC, we can definitely come back to you with that answer.
Our next question is from Assemblymember De Silva.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a quick question about a portion of your presentation. You said briefly that there was issues accessing federal grant funding for programs like this. I was wondering if you could discuss what are some of those issues, and also what specific types of grants would you be applying for? I see that Section 4 expressly gives powers to the office to apply for these sort of grants. So what kind of grant funding would you be looking for? Thank you.
Adam Miller for the record. Yeah, great question. So as I'm sure many of you are familiar, the federal grant situation is currently fluid. OCDC in particular has, I think, 5 or 6 grants from FY23 through FY24. 2 in particular are for a security operations center. 2 in particular are for an incident response team. 1 is for a cyber threat intelligence program. And so this money can be used to leverage and bolster a state-driven security operations center, whether that's through training programs. So to Assemblymember Jackson's point, where we're not going to be monitoring, communication from students, we can provide that training to K through 12 and saying, hey, these are ways you can avoid malicious links. These are ways that you can, ethically hack within the classroom environment, not going out and trying to, be a renegade and do it that way. The grants that we've already procured, we're just waiting for the money to come in and kind of the authority to go spend, but it will be used as a kind of a pillar in how we reach out to the community, provide them licenses, provide them training, and bring them into the SOC circle.
Our next question is from Assemblymember Carter.
Thank you. Yeah, my question has to do more with alignment. We have seen the executive branch of this state align themselves with the illegal seizing of personal data at a national level and letting independent contractors and non-government agencies come in and attack and have access to personal private data, with our executive branch not only cheering that, but perfectly aligning themselves with that effort to tread all over Americans' rights. What kind of confidence can we have that this isn't that same action being extended down to state level to create a way to attack Nevada citizens for the benefit of political means?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Timothy Galuzzi for the record, State CIO. Like I mentioned before, the municipal governments are still in control of what data is given to the SOC. And so the only data that the SOC would be given access to is the data that is required to conduct scanning of network infrastructure, of logs, of security events. It is not the private personal data that would be of concern. That is wholly owned by the municipal entities, by the owners of that data. This would not give the executive branch of state government access to that in any means necessary.
Well, still haven't had the answer because, early January, we didn't think this could happen at a national level. We're assured, we thought we were secure in our constitutional rights, and that evaporated overnight. Now our rights are being trampled on all over. How can we possibly trust this type of an effort?
Adam Miller for the record. Assemblymember, I think I share your concerns with making sure that data is protected. And I think going back to Assemblymember Golding's question, it's less about getting into that letter as a means of just making sure that letter in and of itself is safe. And so for the data that you're speaking to, we are not looking to go into that specific line and find that specific person and target them. That is not at all the data that we are looking after. We are making sure that the data flow is safe. If there's malicious intent with any of the packets that are being sent, that is what we are looking at. When we talk logs, a log is very vast, and that's, a matter of I'm logging onto my computer in the morning or I'm opening a PDF file. These are all considered logs, so the nefarious intent of the 298 billion logs that the CIO mentioned in his presentation from last fiscal year, it's so vast. We are not looking to target specific data sets for voters or constituents or anything like that. It's strictly managing the network traffic, protecting the network infrastructure, making sure that there's no nefarious purposes.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Hunt.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you guys for the presentation. I have like a bill intent questions. Basically, I wanted a clarification. You want to create a new department, Security Operations Center, and that oversees lots of other departments. It also tells other departments what to do, would have the ability to punish. Also, but what I want to know is what entity would be above the Security Operations Center?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Hunt. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. So what this bill envisions is that with the Security Operations Center would reside within the Office of the Chief Information Officer. And so with everything that we have done since our office has moved into the Office of the Governor, we embrace the tenets of shared governance. And so every policy that's come out of my office, we put it in front of our State Technology Governance Committee. And this is made up of representatives from across the executive branch. And so our vision for this is that the Security Operations Center would have a committee just like that. So any decision, every policy, every product that would be supporting the Security Operations Center would be selected through a governance committee of all of the represented entities that are supported by the Security Operations Center. Because we want our stakeholders that have invested in the success of the Security Operations Center to have a voice. And that's what has made our agency successful in supporting our agency partners throughout the executive branch, and then we want to extend that down to the Security Operations Center. The way that this bill envisions the Security Operations Center today is that it would sit within the Office of the Chief Information Officer, and then it would be directly supported by the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination and the Office of Information Security. And so it's not a brand new department. It really, like I mentioned before in a previous question, that it really just gives us the authorization to provide these services through this vehicle.
And Chair, if I might, Toby Yerk for the record, also to address your question, and I'm hearing kind of a theme of questions that are going on here, and I really want to reiterate that this is, again, it's not just trying to create this new mega department that can oversee and control our entire state. What it's trying to do is really pull together what I think every member on this committee will agree is the threat, mitigate the threat, the cybersecurity threats that exist out there. And I think if I use the weakest link in a chain analogy, it's a hodgepodge right now of security defense mechanisms that our various state agencies have in place, and access through one can gain access to the other. And what we're trying to do through this is mitigate any of those weak links and ensure that we have one strong cyber defense system in place that our state agencies will use. And so the idea of threatening or punishing or doing, really what it's designing is ensuring that anybody that is part of our state's infrastructure, and to mitigate against these threats, meet certain minimum thresholds, minimum standards to ensure that we can accomplish the SOX goal, and that is to prevent our state against these types of attacks.
Our next question is from Assemblymember Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to say thank you for bringing this bill forward. I also want to apologize. I think some of the line of questioning is kind of way out there, so I don't think you guys deserve that. To me, what this sounds like, and I just want to reiterate a little bit. So last night I watched 300 on the flight up here, and he used the analogy that all the shields, everybody has to be able to hold them up together in order to have a strong wall, same as the weakest link. So this sounds to me like you guys are looking to offer an upgraded software that really these local government agencies would not be able to have access to, would not be able to afford, so that they can have the most protection. And it's not NSA, right? That's not what you're looking to do, but offering the greatest protection for Nevadans, for our kids, for our constituents, so that we can ensure that our data is protected. Is that correct?
Thank you, Assemblymember Gallant. Timothy Galuzzi for the record, absolutely. Our intent with this bill and why we are supportive of it is because it does raise the tide. And we understand, and I think we tried to highlight during our presentation, is that Nevada is so interconnected. All levels of government in Nevada are so interconnected that no matter what level you begin your interaction with, eventually it will lead to the executive branch, it will lead to the legislative branch through our communication systems, through SilverNet. And so our intent is to provide at least the opportunity to set a baseline level of security across all entities and to offer that up as a service and to offer that up as an opt-in. And if municipal governments, if K through 12, as any other governmental organization across Nevada, if they find value in that service offering that we're putting out there, then they can invest in it. If they don't, then they don't have to. And I think that's the clear distinction in this, is that it's opt-in. And so if they don't like what we're selling, they don't have to buy. But I think we're incredibly confident that the numbers are there, that once they see what we can provide, the value that we can provide, the community that we're standing up, the intelligence that we can push out there, the value of economies of scale in licensing, in support, in communication, then they'll see it and they'll be there for us. And I think that's what we're really trying to provide.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Vice Chair Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the great presentation. I think tough questions is part of the presentation, so I'm glad you are all prepared. So the existing infrastructure of the Office of CIO already have somebody doing this, and that's Mr. Miller. Your role is already administrator for the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination, right? So why do we need to create something extra when the existence of your role and the definition of what you do is already in here?
Adam Miller for the record. So I think, Vice Chair Nguyen, there's a bit of a distinction. My role is everything outside of the executive branch. And so OIS, the Office of Information Security, that currently sits under the Office of Chief Information Officer, they actually run the SOC service for the executive branch. So currently I don't touch the SOC service that the state provides. And what this bill is looking to entertain is I will be playing a key role in bringing in our community partners to that SOC service. I don't myself, through my office, I don't touch the current SOC service that the state provides. That's done through the Office of Information Security.
So wouldn't that be making sense for you who have the experience to coordinate and bring everybody together versus creating something completely separate that it's kind of redundant to the process?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Nguyen. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. So what this bill really does is it gives the Office of the Chief Information Officer the authorization to provide those direct services to those municipal entities via the SOC. And so that's the bill codifies that direct link between Office of Cyber Defense coordination and being that key partner in bringing those municipal partners in. But we do not currently have that operational mechanism to be able to provide those direct services to municipal partners or to non-executive branch stakeholders. And so that's why we needed this legislation, is because we don't currently have a vehicle to do that. Right now, Office of Information Security can provide those services directly to executive branch entities, and we do so, and they do a dang good job doing it. But we needed a vehicle through this legislation to extend those services out to municipal, to non-executive branch entities.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One of them goes back when you first started talking, you were using examples of like the MGM and what happened at the MGM. You were using examples of what happened in Colorado. All of those sort of end user, and I don't know if I'm using that properly, the flaw in that being it's the person who opens the email. So I know in both of my roles, I have IT departments that say this, this email may be suspicious, maybe all of that. But it's still up to me if I want to click on it. So my question is, I guess kind of, well, hopefully it's not two parts, but how does a centralized structure stop a single user from clicking that button? And my second piece, going to my colleague from District 23's 300 reference, that does work, but if you're allowing people to opt in, then you're allowing entities to not, and therefore that kind of blows the whole idea that everybody's got, their shield up if there's people that don't have shields. So I guess that is kind of one question, if you could answer that.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. You're absolutely right. The human element is still, like I said in the presentation, it is that one piece that, there is no system, there is no absolute control that is 100% preventative of that last piece. What we do, and what we do quite well here in the executive branch, is we educate, we train. We have a platform here in the executive branch called Know Before, and we send out simulated phishing attempts and whatnot through, so they get real practical training on, what email is suspicious and what's not. And if they click on one of our training emails, they get some remedial training, and no one likes remedial training. And then their supervisor is notified, and it's a lot of fun. But that's one of the ways that we mitigate that process, and we have the numbers, we can back that up, that it works, but it's never going to be 100%. And so one of the service offerings that we're envisioning is to be able to extend a service like that, a similar service, out to all partners in the SOC, so we can at least raise that tide across the entirety of Nevada. And then to the second part of your question, how do we make sure that shield wall is as strong as possible, as many shields as possible? And that's on us. That's on us to go out there and hit the streets and prove the value of this, to do that stakeholder engagement. And we're not starting from ground zero. I know Administrator Miller and we've already been having those conversations with a lot of the key stakeholders across Nevada. Are we going to be at 100% on day one? Probably not. I can almost guarantee no. But we had to leave it as opt-in because municipal governments are their own governments. And we had to respect the fact that they can determine their own fate and their own direction. And we would love for them all to say, hey, this is a great idea. We all want to invest in cybersecurity, and this is the path that we want to go on. But, we wanted to kind of put it out there and put the kind of bet on ourselves and say that, if this is worthwhile, we would build this in a way that we have to go out there and prove the value of this to the point where they have to put this in their budgets moving forward into next biennium. And if we're not out there proving enough value, then we're not doing our part.
And Chair, if I might, Toby York for the record. I will tell you that as well, I've had numerous conversations with local governments, counties, municipalities, all of whom have acknowledged and recognized the threat, that this, and the need for cybersecurity. There are some entities that are ramping up their own. They've invested in products and services to mitigate this threat that's out there, and quite frankly, have expressed some interest in the idea that our state might be able to offer those services at some point through an economies of scale, where we see that not only in the long term that this isn't costing more money, it actually could save money just by leveraging these resources and making these offerings statewide, across all of our agencies. But to be sure, there are also smaller entities out there, smaller governments, counties that don't have big budgets. And because we've put this package together in a scalable way, we would be able to offer these services and provide it to people that don't have the ability to really fend off these types of attacks now. So while certainly, again, addressing the first part of the question, we will never escape the human element. But through training, I think most of the members of this dais have learned to recognize, ooh, this thing looks a little fishy, right? There are no toll roads in Nevada. To recognize these sorts of things, training and stuff will certainly help. But that human element will always be there. And then in terms of getting everybody on board, as Mr. Galuzzi said, I think through time we will demonstrate the efficiency of this statewide SOC and offering these services and the money savings that can be had as a result of that. I think long term this can be something that we'll get large scale buy-in to.
Thank you. And then my second question is for those entities that opt in. So they opt in, there is trainings and equipment and services, but there's also if the entity opts in and doesn't comply with the policies and protocols, and I'm on section 3, page 4, comply with the cybersecurity policies and protocols developed by the SOC, the chief may impose additional oversight, audit requirements, restrict the agency's access to the equipment of the office, and or it doesn't say and or, so I guess I could do, charge the agency an additional amount for using the agency's continued use of equipment and services, which also, once they opt in, the user agency, whether they're a small entity or a large entity, they're paying out of their own budgets for services and equipment, and that equipment is installed on I don't know, I'm probably using the wording, computers, systems, or whatever, that's installed onto their stuff, and there's a charge for that. But there's also penalties if they don't follow. Am I reading that correctly?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Yes, that is the correct interpretation. I believe the intent of that section was to ensure compliance with the policies. I think it's one thing to sign up for a service and say that one will follow the policies, but then if there is non-compliance, if there's no enforcement mechanism, it could create a situation where you're putting the larger entity at risk. And so I think that would be taken very judiciously and at a step-up type mechanism. We're obviously incredibly open to conversations on that section, but as with everything in this, being that it is opt-in and all of these services would be negotiated for, even that provision could be handled during the negotiation process with the agencies that are leveraging these services.
Thank you. We still have 3 more folks that are wanting to ask questions. We're going to go to Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for working on this. Cybersecurity is a real threat. We have it now. It will only continue to get worse, and I do think as a state, we have an obligation to look at the most efficient ways that we can protect our state and the information that we do have. I'm in real estate, and we're constantly under attack with insurance companies, real estate. We have people losing large amounts of money because of cybersecurity, and so it's something we have to constantly work at and be vigilant with. So thank you again for looking to try and bring economies of scale to the state. My question has to do with, I just wanted to understand, so this is authorizing language. So at this point, there's no fiscal note or need for any additional staff because you can handle it with your current infrastructure. And then along with that, you're looking at in the future, agencies would be paying for it, so you don't need to increase the budget with this new Security Operations Center?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Kasama. Timothy Galuzzi, for the record, your interpretation is absolutely correct. So because this legislation is just authorizing legislation, we are not attaching a fiscal note to this. Just like was previously mentioned, we plan on scoping this up as the need increases. So as municipal partners or non-executive branch partners sign on to this service, we would then extend out those services to them. We could set a rate at that point if we do not have grant funding, and so it would be effectively cost neutral as we roll it out initially. And then we would talk about future funding in future biennia for sustainment moving forward. But at that point, we would be able to set a rate. We already have the authorization in 242 already existing for the Chief Information Officer to set a rate for services. And so this would be a self-sustaining program moving forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think everyone on the committee who hasn't asked a question had the opportunity, so there's a couple of second chance questions here. First, we will go to Assemblymember Goulding.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification, because the examples that you've given us are all related to email. So is this really email security? Would it be appropriate to think of this as a beefed up Microsoft Office email security, or is there something beyond that? I think that some of us have expressed some concern about access to data that's not email. So I'm wondering if you can just clarify, what are you proposing securing?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Timothy Galuzzi, for the record. We use email just as a very tangible and comprehensible example. I think the vast majority of the logs and what the Security Operations Center would be seeing would honestly be very boring logs to this committee. It would be network traffic logs. It would be login attempts. It would be not very exciting stuff for the general public to see. And so it would not necessarily be an email security platform. It would be more of a holistic security approach where we talk about security logs from different sensors that might be embedded in infrastructure. So not at the data level, we're talking the infrastructure level. So we're talking about network logs, we're talking logs from servers, not the data, but the actual equipment itself. And so that's what a lot of the work that the Security Operations Center would be doing, would be monitoring the traffic, that network traffic, to look for any anomalous activity. So if we see any activity that is coming from a country of concern or going to a country of concern, that would obviously be an immediate flag for us, and then that would trigger immediate action. And a Security Operations Center would provide us that opportunity, that real-time monitoring opportunity, to be able to act. Instead of waiting for an event to happen, we'd be able to respond in real time. And so email is a very convenient example to use because we all use email in our daily lives, but that's only one small piece of what the Security Operations Center would be doing.
Thank you for that clarification. It was helpful.
And our last question, let me check, Assembly Member Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But I'd save my second question. until I heard a bit more of your presentation. So we haven't even really begun to get into the weeds of what the equipment itself consists of. But it's curious to me how it will roll out across counties, given that you have clerk's offices, recorder's offices, assessors, treasurers, hospitals that have within them already intricate programs that they use to interface and interact with their customers. In order to even roll something like this out, if a agency were to consider opting in when most of them already have very sophisticated systems in place under their chief information officers, and they spend quite a bit in their budgets, what type of manpower to actually watch this broad of a data tracking are we talking about, hoping that they will pay for?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. What we're looking at in the very initial phases of this is to leverage what is coined as a managed SOC or a managed security operations center. And so that is primarily vendor supported. So if it's services that are beyond what my Office of Information Security can provide, it would be vendor supported, and a lot of that is virtual. So it'd be synonymous with like a platform as a service or a software as a service, and so as far as actual physical equipment, I do not foresee in the initial rollout us having to show up with trucks worth of equipment out to Elko or Ely to drop off and set up physical infrastructure. It would more be along the lines of installing software and rolling out digital sensors along those lines to support those communities. And signing them up for a subscription service is more likely the response in at least the initial rollout as we scale this up.
Go ahead.
Adam Miller for the record, and I think this kind of touches a bit on Assemblymember De Silva's original question too about where some of the grant funding can come from. The grant funding will provide a beautiful on-ramp for the state SOC. And what I mean by that is the grant funding that I've received for my office comes from the state and local cybersecurity grant program. Within that, my office has to act as the rural pass-through. So as we look at the Clark counties, the Washoe counties, they've got the budget resources most likely to pay for the SOC outright from day one. When we look at our smaller municipalities, smaller counties, I am able to use that grant funding to purchase the licenses, purchase the training materials that they need so that they're not fronting the cost on day one. And so I think that provides that on-ramp to get them in the door. And then as we talk about, next biennium, the biennium after that, building that into their budgets. But in the meantime, I can provide those licenses that they need to get on board through grant funding.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I have a quick follow-up to that?
Quick follow-up.
So are you saying that you've assessed with these counties that they have a need, like you've done an assessment of which counties have this need? Or you just assume that this is such a great product, they will all want to get on board if you could stand it up nicely?
Adam Miller for the record. Yeah, so we're currently in the middle of a feasibility study with UNLV on what a statewide SOC would look like, target areas, who to bring on board first. Because I have the SLCGP grant money, I have to spend a majority of that in rural areas. Otherwise, the state of Nevada loses the entirety of the $5 million grant. So whether we highlight certain municipalities, certain counties that need that service, that money has to go to those areas. And so that will be the primary focus of where we onboard those folks. And again, it's opt-in, so they don't have to take that service, but that's who we will be engaging with at the forefront to make sure that we can look at bringing those folks in.
Thank you. I don't think there's any additional questions from the committee. Thank you so much. This is an important topic. It's important that we kind of flesh out as much as we can from our end so that we can explain everything that's going on. I really appreciate your time on this, but we would now like to move on to testimony on this bill. Testimony can be provided here in person in Carson City via video conference in Las Vegas or over the phone. Further instructions for providing testimony can be found on the agenda. As a reminder, support means you approve of the measure as written or as written along with proposed amendments that have been approved by the sponsor of the measure. Opposition means you do not approve the measure as written, including if you wish to propose amendments that have not been approved by the sponsor. And neutral means that you are offering insight on the measure but expressing no position. We will begin with testimony in person here in Carson City for AB 432, and go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Ashley Kennedy, representing Clark County. I'm here to testify in support of AB 432. Our Clark County Chief Information Officer has been in conversations with the state CIO, and we believe this is moves us towards a single model of cybersecurity and easier to participate in statewide efforts. And I do appreciate that this is an opt-in system because it gives us the ability to plan, to collaborate, and to budget for these services. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Considine, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. We're here in support of AB 432, as well as it creates a centralized source for developing stronger and faster responses to cybersecurity breaches. We appreciate that this is a comprehensive approach that creates both a cybersecurity talent pipeline, as outlined in Section 7, as well as gives some economic scalability to state and local agencies that are looking at strengthening their systems as contemplated in Section 15. Cybersecurity is essential to keeping our state thriving as well as protecting the data of all of our Nevadans. So we ask for your support. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Randy Robinson, Director of Government Affairs for the City of Las Vegas, in support of AB 432. We ventured down this path a few years ago at the City of Las Vegas, so we're aware of some of the challenges and issues that come up that you have all raised here this morning. I really appreciate you giving it so much time because this is a critical issue for all of us. We might have the strongest fortress that we can possibly muster. We spend all of our time protecting our own fortress, and if another piece of the network is not as strong, that creates a vulnerability for all of us. Several years ago, I spent many years with one of the largest telecoms in the world, and got a little nerded out about cybersecurity. And one of the examples that I remember is of a threat that occurred, an attack that was successful in a very rural area of a very rural state that ended up affecting institutions across the western United States. They don't care how they get in. They just want to get in. And so the more that we can share intelligence and protect each other, help each other protect each other, the better off we'll be. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Alejandro Rodriguez, Nevada System of Higher Education. NCHE plays an important role in cybersecurity enhancement, and the provisions of this bill help address the growing threats that impact all sectors, including higher education. We especially look forward to collaborating on the scope and structure of the development of the Cybersecurity Talent Pipeline program, as this will provide valuable hands-on opportunities for students to develop the skills needed to fill critical workforce gaps in this high-demand industry. By leveraging NCHE's expertise and educational resources, AB 432 helps Nevada have a well-trained, highly skilled cybersecurity workforce prepared to meet the challenges of the future. We appreciate Assemblymember Urick bringing forward this bill, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Austin Daly on behalf of the University of Nevada, Reno. For the record, I want to say that we are in support of AB 432 and especially in support of the Cybersecurity Talent Pipeline program for our students as well. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in support of AB 432? Seeing no one, we will go to Las Vegas. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kıvanç Öner, Kivanconer, and I serve as the Vice President for Digital Transformation and Chief Information Officer at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I'm here today to express UNLV's strong support for AB 432. This legislation speaks directly to an urgent and growing need, the ability to safeguard Nevada's public agencies, institutions, and infrastructure against increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. A centralized SOC would significantly enhance our statewide cyber readiness by improving visibility, coordination, and response across jurisdictions. I want to acknowledge our CISO, Vitor Rocco, who has been instrumental in advancing this vision. We have been working closely with State CIO Tim Galuzzi for over a year. What makes AB 432 particularly forward-thinking is its integration of workforce development through cybersecurity talent pipeline program. At UNLV, we see firsthand how much interest and demand there is from students for practical, hands-on cybersecurity experience. This initiative would allow them to work inside a real SOC, learning directly from seasoned professionals and gaining the kind of experience that leads to meaningful, high-impact careers. We recognize that continued dialogue and thoughtful planning will be needed to ensure this workforce pipeline is supported sustainably, including discussions around resources, grants, funding as the program scales. This is also a moment of strategic alignment. Our current officer in charge, Hiwi, has been deeply supportive of this effort. He has helped ensure that this initiative is embraced across the university. We've also been working with our academic partners, including faculty in business and computer science, to align curriculum and research opportunities with this emerging infrastructure. AB 42 is more than a cybersecurity measure. It's an investment in Nevada's digital resilience, workforce development, and economic competitiveness. It helps position UNLV and our sister institutions across NSHE as national leaders in cybersecurity education and innovation. I respectfully urge your support and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else in Las Vegas approaching the table. AVH, is there anyone online in support of AB 432?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill AB 432, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good morning, Chair. And this is a former Assemblywoman Claire Thomas. I am in full support of AB 432, as this is something that our state has or will need in the future. I'm looking at it as being relative to the Iron Dome. It is not an individual entity. It is for the whole scope of Nevada, and I think that this would be something that not only myself as a constituent, but other constituents, especially when we have breach of security in any small entity. This way, the bigger picture is that before it happens, this could be alleviated. And I want to thank Assemblymember Yerk for sponsoring AB 432, and I am in full support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. We have no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will now hear testimony in opposition to AB 432. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to oppose AB 432? Seeing no one approach, is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to provide testimony in opposition to AB 432? Seeing no one approach, AVH, is there anyone on the line for opposition testimony for AB 432?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 432, please press star 9.
Yeah, hello, this is Al Rojas from Assembly District 12, testifying in strong opposition against AB 432. I live in Assembly District 12. The committee has asked some very specific questions regarding cybersecurity. I'm a retired electronics and software engineer, and I have expertise in designing many softwares. This weekend, I was on social media, and I got into a dispute, and somebody determined that I downloaded videos to fix my Android phone and to repair my my put up sheet metal on sheetrock on my wall. How come I didn't know how to do that? They ridiculed me. I wanted to know how did they figure that out? Okay, so and I wanted to have maybe a software security detective determine that. And the problem here is that this is the worst explanation of a software product I've ever seen, because you're supposed to have a spec. The person who presented this software should be ashamed of themselves, because when they were asked these questions, he should have pulled out a software spec and says, in our specification, it says this, and these people will be held accountable. There should be clear boundaries. I've designed both hardware and software. I've designed a lot of stuff. And any engineer, when asked a specific question, will bring out a specification and tell you, this is the product that I'm using. This is our procedure. I heard nothing from the presenter of this that our software spec specifically states that the boundary is here and everybody crosses this boundary, they will get arrested. I'm part of a neighborhood watch program, and there's a lot of times that we got to trespass people, and the police have to follow the rules. Our rules for the law are very well laid out, and we should be taking that path also for software security laws. I am totally against this bill, and I am sorry. I am disgusted for the discussion of the person who presented this.
Thank you, Mr.
very
Rojas.
much.
That's your 2 minutes.
Chair, we have no additional callers in opposition.
Thank you. We will now move on to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral? Seeing no one, is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral on AB 432? Seeing no one approach, AVH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in neutral on AB 432?
Chair, the public line is open and working. We have no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you. And if the presenter would like to make some final remarks, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Toby Urick for the record. I want to tell you that I love the way this hearing went. I love the robust debate, the difficult questions. Truly, it's fun to see a committee that engages like that. And what I want to do as I close is offer assurances. There is nothing in AB 432 that is going to extend our state, its agencies, anybody increased access to the data, quite frankly, that this bill is designed and is attempting to protect. So we all agree. I've seen that as a theme, right, as we just continue to advance down this digital age of wanting to protect our data. That is exactly what this bill does. It doesn't give us access to the content of this information. It is all designed to help elevate, coordinate the defense systems that we can have in place to fight off attacks that people would otherwise get access to the data that we're all trying to to protect. So I appreciate everybody's questions and participation, and I encourage your support of AB 432.
Thank you. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 432.